Hello everyone, let us begin with the second chapter, biological classification. In this chapter, we are going to study how the living organisms are classified. So to begin with the introduction, how did the classification started? So it started centuries back, wherein many people tried to classify the living organism. But the way they classified the living organism was with respect to the use of the organisms. Maybe the organism, the living ones which are useful with respect to food, with respect to shelter, or with respect to any other human needs. But authentically, it was Aristotle who started to classify the living organisms on the basis exactly on the scientific way. So, it started, the classification of the living organisms started with the help of Aristotle in a scientific way. So, how did Aristotle classify the living organisms? First of all, he classified the living organism, let's say for example, plants. He classified the plants into three different types. That is, he classified the plants into one group, that is tree, the other groups herb, and the other group was shrub. So he classified the plants in three different manner. First one was trees, herbs and shrubs. And he also classified the animals. He classified the animals based on the presence of RBC, that is red blood cells. The animals which have the red blood cells was grouped into one category, whereas the animal which did not have this hemoglobin pigment, the red color pigment, that was classified into another group. Okay, so he classified the animals based on the presence and absence of RBC. So this is how classification started, and this sort of classification is called as Aristotle's classification. The second kingdom classification was proposed by Carl Linnaeus. Carl Linnaeus was a Swedish botanist, and he proposed the two kingdom classification. Now, when you are referring to two kingdom classification, it means to say the living organisms are classified under two different groups. The first one is the kingdom Plantae and the second one is the kingdom Animalia. So, the drawbacks of the two kingdom classification. There were certain drawbacks with respect to Carl Linnaeus classification. That is the reason why this classification was not accepted. Now, what are those drawbacks? The first drawback is he did not differentiate the prokaryote and eukaryote. He included both the prokaryotes and eukaryotes under the same category, that is the plants. Now, what is a prokaryote? Prokaryote are the unicellular organisms. So, in this unicellular organism, so-called prokaryote, they do not have the cell organelles. Cell organelles are absent. For example, cyanobacteria, bacteria. So, these are the examples of prokaryotes. With respect to eukaryotes, ferns, mosses, angiosperms, gymnosperms, So all this comes under eukaryotes. What are eukaryotes? Eukaryotes are multicellular in nature, and eukaryotes also have all the cell organelles present in them. For example, mitochondria is present, endoplasmic reticulum is present, Golgi apparatus. So all these important structures are present in case of eukaryotes. But Carl Linnaeus has included bacteria like cyanobacteria, bacteria from the prokaryotes, and he has included all the angiosperm, gymnosperm, ferns and mosses. All these things he had included in only one kingdom, that is under the kingdom Plantae. Therefore, this is also the reason why his two kingdom classification was rejected. Now, the second drawback is he included unicellular and multicellular in the same group. Let us consider one example. The example for unicellular is Chlamydomonas, and the example for the multicellular organism is Spirogyra. Chlamydomonas are unicellular in nature. It is an algae, it is present in fresh water and it is unicellular. Whereas the multicellular organisms, that is the Spirogyra, it is filamentous in nature. It can be even colonial. Okay, so this filamentous nature of the Spirogyra and the single unicellular nature, that is both the unicellular and the multicellular organisms, everything was put in the same category. He did not differentiate a unicellular and multicellular organisms. And the third reason is he did not differentiate the heterotrophic fungi and then autotrophic green plants. Now, what do you mean by heterotrophic fungi? Heterotrophic means the living organisms which cannot prepare its own food. So, that is called as heterotrophic organisms. So, here the fungi is not able to make its own food. Why? Because the fungi does not have the chlorophyll in them. They are not autotrophic. They are heterotrophic. That means to say they are dependent upon another living organisms for their food. They might kill or they might even feed on a dead organisms. So, all in all, for the purpose of food, they are dependent upon the other living organism because they are not able to make the food on their own. So, that is called as heterotrophic mode of nutrition. So, fungi is heterotrophic in nature. And with respect to green plants, they are autotrophic in nature. What do you mean by autotrophic? That means to say they are able to make their own food. Green plants are able to make their own food because they have chlorophyll in them. With the help of sunlight and in the presence of chlorophyll, the green plants are able to make their own food, and this nature is called as autotrophic mode of nutrition. So, he was not able to differentiate between an heterotrophic fungi and an autotrophic green plants. And there is many other differences. Like for example, with respect to fungi, the cell wall is made up of chitin. Now, what is chitin? Chitin is a protein which is quite hard, and the cell wall is made up of chitin with respect to fungi. And with respect to the green plants, the cell is made up of cellulose. So, this is another difference. So, Carl Linnaeus was not able to differentiate these differences, and he has put everything in the same category. So, that is the reason why Carl Linnaeus' two kingdom classification was rejected. The next one is the 5-kingdom classification. The 5-kingdom classification was proposed by R.H. Whittaker in the year 1969. And this 5-kingdom classification, it includes 5 kingdoms. The first kingdom is kingdom monera. The second kingdom is kingdom protista. The third one is kingdom fungi. The fourth one is kingdom plantae, and the fifth one is kingdom animalia. So now, how did he classify these living organisms into these 5 different kingdoms? He included different factors. The first factor is the cell structure. So based on the structure of the cell, he classified these living organisms. Like if the cell structure has the peptidoglycan in it, or whether the cell structure has got amino acids or the polysaccharides in it. So based on the content which is present in the cell and the structure of the cell, he categorized them under these different categories. The second factor is the thallus organization or the body organization. Now what do you mean by thallus? Thallus means a very simplified body structure. Here with respect to plants, you don't find any stem, you don't find any leaves. For example, like algae, fungi. Here you don't find the body organization. Body is not divided into stem, leaves and all, right? So thallus means a simplified version wherein you don't find the stem, you don't find the leaves, and also you don't find the important tissues like xylem and phloem. So the usual cells, they perform all these activities of the xylem and phloem. So this is called as thallus organization. The third factor, how we categorize this 5-kingdom classification, is based on their mode of nutrition. Whether they are autotrophic, whether they are chemosynthetic, whether they are heterotrophic, or whether they are saprophytic in nature. So with respect to the mode of nutrition, they also categorize this 5-kingdom classification. The next one is with respect to reproduction. Whether it's a sexual, asexual, whether the spores are produced. So based on their reproduction, asexual and the sexual type, he categorized them. Next, 5th one is based on the phylogenetic relationship. Phylogenetic means evolutionary relationship. Whether this organism is related to the other organism. So how did this particular living organism exist? Who were its ancestors? So with comparing this ancestor lineage, okay, so this is called as phylogenetic relationship. So based on these factors, he divided the living organisms into 5 different kingdoms. So this is called as 5-kingdom classification. And yes, this kingdom is highly accepted. So now let's study each kingdom one by one. So first let's study about kingdom monera. So for example, which comes under kingdom monera is the bacteria. So now what are the characteristic features of the bacteria with respect to 5-kingdom classification? So the first factor is with respect to the cell structure. Kingdom monera, the example as I said, it is bacteria and it is prokaryote. It is prokaryotic in nature. And with respect to the cell structure, the cell is made up of amino acids and polysaccharides. The content which is present in the cell is polysaccharide and amino acid. and it is cellular in nature. And the mode of nutrition. The mode of nutrition with respect to kingdom monera is, it is autotrophic and heterotrophic. And now when you are referring to autotrophic and heterotrophic, there are many other categories. So the first one, as I said, the living organisms which are coming under kingdom monera, it can be autotrophic or it can be heterotrophic. Autotrophic means the living organisms who are able to synthesize their own food. So the one which they are able to synthesize their own food with the help of the chlorophyll in presence of sunlight. This is one category which comes under autotrophic, and the next one more which comes under autotrophic is chemosynthetic. Chemosynthetic also comes under autotrophic. Here chemosynthetic means they are able to synthesize their own food, but not with the help of chlorophyll, rather by breaking down the organic and inorganic compounds present in their body. So that is how they obtain ATP in their body. So autotrophic means they also make their own food. Chemosynthetic means they also prepare their own food. The difference lies with respect to the presence and absence of chlorophyll. With respect to autotrophic, chlorophyll is present. With the help of sunlight, they prepare their own food. But with respect to chemosynthetic, they also prepare their own food, but by breaking down the organic and inorganic compounds which is present in their body. All in all, they make their food on their own. Next one is heterotrophic mode. Heterotrophic mode means the living organisms are not able to make the food on their own. That means to say they are dependent upon other living organisms. And when I say they are dependent upon other living organisms, they can be saprophytic in nature. Saprophytic means they can feed on dead matter, though the dead living organisms, the living organisms which are dead. And they can even go and hunt or kill the other organisms and eat them. So this is called as heterotrophic mode of nutrition. So under kingdom monera, you can find the living organisms which are autotrophic, which are chemosynthetic, which are heterotrophic, and which are also saprophytic. So this is the mode of nutrition which comes under kingdom monera. So these are the characteristic features which are present in kingdom monera. So now let's study in detail kingdom monera. The example which comes under kingdom monera is bacteria. Now, where do we find bacteria? Bacteria is found everywhere. It is found in the air, it is found in the soil, it is found every nook and corner. Bacteria are also present in an extreme environment. Extreme environment means it is even present in a very harsh environment. When I refer to this word harsh environment means, it means to say the harshest of the harshest temperature, extreme temperature greater than 100 degree, 150 degrees centigrade. Even in the coldest one, maybe minus 20 degrees centigrade, you can find the bacteria. Bacteria is also found in the deep trenches in the oceans. It is also found in the region where there is a hot spring. Hot springs means where there is an emission of this, when there is a release of this hot water from underneath the earth. So everywhere you can find the bacteria. Based on the shape, bacteria can be categorized into 4 different types. The first one is based on the shape, bacteria is divided into 4 categories. The first one is the coccus, second one is the Vibrio, third one is the rod shaped, and fourth one is the spiral. With respect to the shape, bacteria are categorized into 4 different types. The first one is coccus. Coccus means the shape is round shape. So the bacteria which is in the round shape are called as coccus bacteria. The bacteria which is in the shape of the comma shaped bacteria, okay, which is in the shape of this, just like a comma shape. So this is called as Vibrio. The bacteria, when it is in the shape of a rod, then you are calling it as rod shaped bacteria. And the bacteria which is in the shape of the spiral, then you are calling it as spiral bacteria. So this is how the bacteria are classified. Now let us study about Archaebacteria. Archaebacteria also comes under kingdom monera. Now what do you mean by Archaebacteria? Archaebacteria are the most primitive type of bacteria. And as I said before, Archaebacteria or the bacteria, they live in the most harshest environment. So there are different types of environment where the bacteria lives. The first one is the halophiles. Halophiles means it is a region which is completely salty. So the bacteria which lives in this salty environment are called as halophiles. So halophiles means the environment here is very salty. So the saltiest environment. The next one is the thermoacidophiles. Thermoacidophiles means here there are 2 important terminologies which is merged. Thermo means heat, acidophiles means highly acidic in nature. So the bacteria here is living in 2 different conditions which is merged, that is in the highest temperature and also the region which is highly acidic in nature. So thermoacidophiles means which is very hot. So thermal means heat or hot plus highly acidic. So this is the meaning of this terminology called as thermoacidophiles. The next region where the bacteria lives is in a marshy areas. Marshy areas means wet areas, and the bacteria which lives in this marshy areas are called as methanogens. So they live even in a highly marshy area. Marshy means wet. Wet. For example, in case of cattle like cow, inside the stomach of the cow, bacteria thrives there. So obviously inside the stomach of the cow, the area will be highly marshy. It will be very wet. So inside this stomach, you can find the thriving of this bacteria. And this bacteria is highly anaerobic. That means to say they do not need the oxygen for the survival. And this bacteria which is present inside the stomach of the cow, it digests all the cellulose which is present in the grass, because the cow feeds upon the grass and the grass contains the cellulose, and this cellulose has to be broken down. And it is this bacteria which is present inside the body of the cow which is helping to break down the cellulose. And in the process of breaking down this cellulose, it releases the gas, and the gas is methane gas. And obviously because of this, the bacteria gets the name methanogens. Methanogens means methane releasing bacteria. So all in all, bacteria thrives in the most harshest environment, as I said, first in the halophiles where the environment is extremely salty, in the thermoacidophiles where an environment is both highly hot and highly acidic in nature. And in the third one, the bacteria also thrives in the place where it is extremely marshy. Next, the second one is the Eubacteria. Eubacteria. Eu means true bacteria. Eu means true. So in case of Eubacteria, it has got the cell wall which is very rigid. And what does the cell wall contain? The cell wall contains polysaccharides and amino acids. And if the bacteria is motile in nature, motile means able to move. If the bacteria is motile or if the bacteria moves, then it will even have a flagella, because with the help of the flipping or the lashing movements of this flagella, the bacteria is able to move from one place to another place. So Eubacteria consists of a rigid cell wall and a flagella if the bacteria is motile in nature. And the Eubacteria's mode of nutrition is, it can be autotrophic or it can be heterotrophic. Autotrophic means it can be photosynthetic or even it can be chemosynthetic. Heterotrophic means it can be saprophytic or even it can kill other organisms and eat them. So I hope you know what is autotrophic. Autotrophic means when the chlorophyll is present, they can prepare its own food. Chemosynthetic means they break down the organic and inorganic compounds and they make their own food. All in all, they make their own food. So that is called as autotrophic mode. Heterotrophic means they cannot make their own food and they are dependent upon other living organisms. If they are dead, they consume them. That is called as saprophytic, or they might kill them and they might eat them. So that is also called as heterotrophic mode of nutrition. So these are the characteristic features with respect to the Eubacteria.